and initial primary studies support these figures he presented. But I can with great confidence, because I have primary references, state that convulsions as a result of the measles vaccine recur in 1 in every 526 vaccine recipients. This citation actually led to a journal article about necrolytic inflammatory erythema with carcinoma of the pancreas. Another thing. Susceptibility to infection after vaccination was another article. The author was listed as Erland. As it turned out, the actual author was Erlengut. Things weren't adding up. I'll explain. Another one. There was an article from the Journal of Infectious Diseases. It's pretty well known, but it was listed as coming from the Journal Infection Disorder. Almost as someone had taken the abbreviation of Journal of Infectious Diseases, which is J-Infect-Dis, and then tried to expand it without knowing what the journal was. And there was another one. Ectopic overload at the site of blah, 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 had been changed to vaccines may cause immune suppression. No one will be stupid in a submission to a government body to actually change the name of an article to something completely different. No one would risk that at all. So what I did is, I thought maybe she's copied and pasted these citations from somewhere else. That would explain why they had nothing to do with what she thought they were talking about, and would explain where these errors came from. So I googled these errors, in quotation marks, and it turns out there is one website. Actually, there's 5 websites that has all of her immune suppression articles. There's one website that most of her, yes?
Start with an aquatic mammal.
Oh, yes! There's one website that has most of her citations in it. How many of you have heard of whale.to or whale2?
Oh, shit. What?
Let me introduce you to whale2. Bastion of quackery on the internet. This website, apparently hosted in Britain, explains how, death towers, or we know them as cell phone towers. They're called death towers. They emit deadly orgone radiation, and they harm children and damage the atmosphere. Yeah.
I used to be HCN on Usenet, and I was the one who pointed out that he burned his thumb with satanic ley lines. And that was in the National Wiki for Scopy Law.
Nice. Another one is Wales actually has a dedicated section on the reptilian overlord invasion. We said the reptilian aliens are going to take us over. Yes, exactly. They have a section of before and after photos of people who have had plastic surgery or have simply aged. And the changes in their faces over time prove that they've been replaced by reptilian aliens, including the Pope. Anyway, so imagine you're the president of the Australian Vaccination Network and you want reliable citations on how vaccines suppress the immune system. You type in whale2, and it just so happens they have a medical citation section down here. Medical citations, click that. Oh look, they have a dedicated vaccination section. Click that. They have an immune suppression section. Funnily enough, may I point out that she used the term immune suppression, just as it does here, even though immunosuppression is a more common word form these days. So you click this link, and here's the article. There's the list of citations, and oh look, there's one, but two of her 5 immune suppression articles. 3, 4, 5. Oh, all of the immune. Yeah. So basically, we're able to demonstrate that not only was there no scientific basis for these claims, but there was such disrespect for the government authorities she was reporting to that she was more than happy to simply copy and paste the citations from a conspiracy site, as if that would be appropriate.
Wow.
So, the HCCC replied in July 2010, almost a year later. If you're going to complain to a government department, remember they move at glacial speed, but often it can be very worth it. So we got all these wonderful quotes about how unreliable and wrong the ABN are. The Healthcare Complaints Commission did this beautiful report that was just detailed all these wonderful wrongnesses. So that whenever a journalist wanted to ask, who are these ABN people, we could supply them with a list of quotes. Anyway, so they recommended that the ABN put a disclaimer on their website explaining that, one, they're purely anti-vaccine, two, the information is not medical advice, and three, if you're questioning whether to vaccinate yourself or your child, talk to a doctor. They should put this up on their website, this simple disclaimer, and you have 14 days to do it. The ABN said, we already have our disclaimer, which is hidden away in a little jumble of links, which is frankly a weak disclaimer. We're not going to do that. After all, we're not anti-vaccine. We're pro-choice. We're pro-safe vaccine. So, because they didn't do this, the Healthcare Complaints Commission issued a public warning about them. They now have, because of their own stubbornness, a government body. They issued a warning that explained they provide anti-vaccine information. The information is wrong. Frankly, this best bit at the end, they pose a risk to public health and safety. The complaint was great, but because of their own stubbornness, they now have a government agency issue a public warning saying they pose a risk to public health and safety. So where do we go from here? The news media now has a wonderful source of quotes about the ABN to give. When they have a story about vaccines, they no longer go to the ABN for some reason. They're considered toxic. Can't imagine why. But one of our major late night current affair programs, Late Line, gave the first report on the ABN. We promised them they'd be the first news outlet to carry a copy of the HCCC complaint, and so they did a wonderful report on the ABN, which made them out, frankly, a bunch of clowns. So we also complained to venues that were hosting the ABN. They were going to talk at a school, give a seminar, and they got pulled. Great. They were going to talk at a church, an Anglican church in Adelaide, I believe. And when some of the higher up members of the church got wind of the nature of the organisation, they said, pull us. The State Library of Western Australia were going to host their conference, their seminar. We complained. The library went through with it. You win some, you lose some. There's other things to complain about, though. As it turns out, you can look up other malfeasance. There's copyright breaches, and there's the charity laws. The ABN sold information packs, which consisted of lots of abstracts of journal articles and all sorts of articles by people simply photocopied.
Wow.
Just packs full of stacks of photocopied articles just sold. As it turns out, it's illegal to sell someone else's work without getting their permission. The ABN hadn't heard of this, even though at the front of their magazine there's a disclaimer saying you can't sell parts of this without. Anyway, we informed various authors that their work was being copied and sold without their permission. They weren't too happy. But another thing was charity breaches. The ABN were operating as a charity. So this is going to sound odd, but the Office of Liquor, Gaming and Racing regulate our charities. In New South Wales. So, let me introduce you to Wendy Wilkinson. She's been a nurse for many years. She got more involved in the anti-vaccine movement. Had a look at some of the ABN's claims, the sort of thing where you submit some queries and don't get any responses, even when they're legally obliged to give responses. And had a look at the ABN's fundraising page. So they had some pretty standard things. Your current, it's a bit of a grey area. And as it turned out, there was a complaint submitted to the OLGNR, the Office of Gaming and Racing, and it said it was okay. But they were fundraising for an interesting thing. One of them was they were going to lobby the federal parliament so that if you want to be a conscientious objector to vaccination, you or your kids don't get vaccinated, you have to talk to a doctor to sign your forms. They wanted to lobby it so you didn't have to talk to a doctor, you just get them done anyway. Another one was so that the bounty bags, which is basically a show bag into new mothers in the hospital, they wanted to have their magazine put into that bag. Another one was they wanted to test all currently licensed vaccines for heavy metals. And finally, they wanted to keep their 1-800 number going. So pretty standard. Wait, what? They wanted to give their propaganda to new mothers. And apparently they were going to test all vaccines for heavy metals and other toxins and poisonous things. What happened with this? This was up for a while. Why did nothing happen? So, with regard to the bounty bag, we submitted we talked to the bounty bag people and asked, what's going on here? Why would you do this? And they said, actually, we've never agreed to this. We would never put ABN stuff in our bags. Apparently the ABN were collecting money for things that would never happen. And with the heavy metals testing, some queries were submitted to them. And they didn't respond. According to the charities regulator, if someone asks you about your charity, you're meant to respond. If someone wants to know what's happening with their money, you tell them. The ABN weren't really interested in this. They were more than happy to take money for things they weren't going to spend it on, and more than happy to not tell you what's happening with said money. So, with regards to the charitable fundraising authority, that means they could take money from outside the membership, it was decided that it didn't matter if it lapsed. They were more than happy to renew it because apparently the ABN, believe it or not, provide education in a charitable sense. Anyway, so because there was no information forthcoming with it, you could complain, right? If they're not responding to legitimate complaints, queries, there's a reason to complain. And the law specifically states that propaganda and political activities are not legitimate charitable pursuits. So, of course, you got to complain. It works. So, Wendy Wilkinson wrote a great complaint that covered all these bases, basically. So, shows that they weren't replying to inquiries. Basically, pointed out the bounty bags thing. For some reason, they were raising money for something that they were never going to spend it on. Another thing was that the propaganda thing. I'll read out this section. They raised issues with the non-itemized disbursement of donated monies in the publicly available financial statements. What that basically means is, if you look at their financial statements, what it said was all the donations were going into one big pot, and when they wanted money, they were just reaching into that and pulling it out. They weren't, paying attention to who was paying what and what was going where. They had one big pot they were putting all the money into. They were even sitting from city cash. Yeah. So there were apparently clear violations of the relevant legislation. So they also CC'd the complaints to the local member of parliament. But if you're going to complain about an organisation that you think is breaking the law, send it to all the people you can. If you have ombudsmen here, then send it to them. If you have a member of Congress, send it to them. What resulted from the complaints was there was a parliamentary inquiry from the member of Gaming and Racing, an inquiry by the local member. There was ministerial inquiry from the director of the OLGNR. There was the on-site audit. So they managed to spend like $2,800, which is about 2,800 American, when we reached parity recently, on computer repairs. How many computers can you buy for this? There were some odd things turned up. But what happened in the fullness of time was that the relevant member of parliament actually revoked the ABN fundraising authority. It was pulled out. And here's the relevant piece of says A, fundraising appeals have been not being conducted in good faith. They took money for things that weren't going to happen. C, this isn't A, B, C, this is the relevant part in the law. C, fundraising appeals have been properly administered. Oh yeah. And is in the public interest. Thanks to the HCCC report, which demonstrated they were a danger to public health and safety, the OLGNR were able to conclude that these guys, what they're doing isn't in the public interest. So, one of the independent auditors had this to say. Inherent uncertainty regarding continuation. There is inherent uncertainty whether the association will be able to continue as going concern, but without the ability to continue to generate external funding from donations and sponsorships.